So, so I think it'll be useful. So the first thing we're talking about is experience mapping, also known as journey mapping, user mapping, few different things, but I'm going to let Martyn speak now to talk about why we actually do it. What's the point of experience mapping, Martyn?
So Melissa asked me, do you prefer journey mapping or experience mapping? And I hadn't even realized I used the two things interchangeably. But the key thing is, I don't know if anybody works with people who use Agile as a tool, but you'll see lots and lots of sticky notes, lots and lots of post-its, constantly mapping. I mean, that's what I refer to as mapping. It's taking ideas, capturing ideas in the most visible, simple form, moving them around, remapping, mapping, remapping. So journey mapping is a really useful way to get into the shoes of your customer, your user, your client, whoever it is. And instead of thinking about the problems that you have, thinking about the problems that they might experience and where you can add value to them. So at Unboxed, we work a lot with digital services. We create software, we create applications. But those digital services and applications are only a small part of a bigger service. And it's really useful to think about the journey through the service, so how they engage with, how they find out about the service, how they engage with the journey. There's lots of talk about digital learning, so I guess it seems to play a part in learning all the time, even if it's a simple registration form. Anyway, the journey through the service. So once you start to understand the journey that a user might take through the service, are we going to do some personas? We'll talk a bit about personas.
They will be given personas.
You've got your personas. So once you start to understand and put yourself in the shoes of your customer as they go through your service that you're providing, you can start to think about the things that they expect to see. So what have you got to give them? You know, if you don't give them something, they'll be annoyed, and then you give them it and they're happy. So there's these very linear things that they expect. Then there's the things that if you don't give them, they're going to be really annoyed. They expect it to be there. If you do give them it, you know, so. Okay, I expected that. I can give you some examples in a second. And then there's the other things which they never expected to get. But when you give them it, they're very happy. Okay, so there's all sorts of. Do we have a slide of the camera? Yeah, there we go. So has anybody heard of anything called the Kano Model? We didn't include the slide of the Kano Model. No, we didn't. So the Kano Model is a way of classifying these different things that deliver value. We call the things that you don't expect and you don't notice if they're not there, but if you see them, they're delighters or exciters, right? And often they're overlooked. So I'm going to give you some examples. It used to be that if you went into a hotel and you turned on the tap and you got running water, what an amazing thing. Now that's expected. If you go to a hotel and you don't get hot water, you're going to be really annoyed, okay? But how quickly do you expect the hot water to come out of the tap? If you've got a 10-story hotel and you're on the top floor and you turn on the tap and it takes 2 minutes for the hot water to come through, that's now an expectation. You want it instantly. And it's actually quite an effort to deliver hot water to the 10th floor of a hotel room within 2 seconds of turning on the tap. So there's all these different expectations of users. And this is a way of just working through the journey and trying to identify what the user's thinking about, what they expect, what they feel, what their frustrations are, and at what point they might give up and say, actually, this is no good. So I'm going to give you some examples here that I've worked on. So this was a healthcare service which allowed people to order a test kit online. They would get the kit received to their house. They would do the test at home, send it off to the lab, get their test results by SMS. Quite a complex journey. Might be that they had something wrong and they had to go to the clinic and have a check or a test or receive some treatment. So what we started to do was understand this as a funnel. So people arrive, they hear about the service, they engage, they go all the way through this journey, and then they end up round here somewhere where they may or may not end up treatment. You can represent that in different ways. The stickies, post-it notes, we like to keep 3M doing as well as they are. Or you could start to draw it out and understand it more visually. So this is the journey as we explored it. And then you can think about how they might feel through the journey. So they're okay. Then they've got something, generally something causes them some anxiety, a trigger. They go and find a service. They move through the service. It's a bit of a roller coaster ride. They get to the end of the service. They're either very happy or they're very anxious because they've got some kind of horrible disease that they need to get treated. So what we did in here we understood each personas. So you're all going to be given a persona. We called ours proto-personas because they were out of our heads. We imagined a typical customer, someone we want to take on the journey. And we took them through and we identified all the pain points for them and all the points where they might think, actually, this isn't going very well. I can't deal with this. And in this particular instance, it was where you had to give blood at home. Not an easy thing to do. So we spent a lot of time thinking, how can we help them with that journey? How can we help them through the journey and get through this literal pain point to improve the journey? And this is the thing about innovation. Innovation is, if you assume a journey where everyone's okay, they're happy, they're perfectly happy, and then they're a bit unhappy with your service, and then maybe they go a bit higher, you want to close the gap. You want to push everything up to delightful. And you can't just do it once and leave it. You have to constantly be thinking about the journey and how you keep pushing them back up to delightful. Okay? That's the goal for everybody. So we're going to have a go.